You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How would you evaluate the roster so far?
Well, Jackson, thanks for having me on again. 2 days in a row, brother. Appreciate you. It's tough. There's so much turnover, not just at Syracuse, but at pretty much every program. So it's like we're judging things based on rankings and obviously what the guys did at their previous school or in high school. As we talked about in our last podcast, the importance of JJ Starling and Donnie Freeman coming back. You can't say that enough. And Alex Klein and Autry talked about that at their state of the program. Having those two pieces is like your foundation, and then building around that. So, you can't underestimate that. I think the roster on paper looks better than this past season. Is that saying much? They went 14-19. So just not trying to trash this past season's team, but hopefully there'll be a marked improvement. I think they have plenty of guards. I think and it sounds like we're gonna kind of get into this in a second, but maybe could look at adding another small forward or a power forward / center. I think defense is. I'm hoping that the team will be better on defense than it was this past year, but I'm still a little suspect. From in terms of outside shooting, they've got some guys that are shooters. It'll just be interesting to see what the rotations are, end up looking like, beyond just the starting lineup. I don't necessarily think this is going to be a preseason top 25 team. But let's face it, we just want to get back to March Madness. It's been, they've missed it for 4 years since 2021. Can they do that? I think they can. I don't think they're a lock. But again, this is like such, pure speculation right now. And since we're just in early May, but to sum it up, I do think the roster looks better than last year. But I have not, I don't want to say concern. Yeah, I have concerns. I have questions, what's going to happen with, the center spot, and, are they going to be better on defense? How are they going to shoot outside? Are they going to be able to close out opponents? And also, frankly, when they do lose, are they going to keep games close or get blown out? That's something that's been kind of an issue the last few years. So, we'll see. I'm not like, I think as we talked about yesterday, in the previous podcast, I think Naithan George was a huge pickup, and I like Nate Kings as well. And so there's solid pieces there and a nice incoming class, but it's just tough. It's like they've got 12 guys and 10 of them are new, like 6 transfers and 4 high school recruits. So we'll see. What do you think?
So I do think on paper right now, the roster does look better, but like you said, that's not saying much. I mean, I hope you're better. You went 14-19 last year, including the ACC tournament. You went 13-18 in the regular season. I think the biggest strength is just overall, I think their ability to score. It's kind of funny because Syracuse basketball last year, you would think that their offense is horrible. Like I would expect you to think that way. You have Donnie Freeman out for more than half the season, who was one of your leading scorers. JJ Starling missed some time. And let's face it, the personnel on the roster was not great. I mean, Eddie Lampkin could score a little, and outside of that, there wasn't really much, right? And yet, I look at the ACC stats. They were 8th in offense last year in the conference. They averaged about 75 points a game.
Yeah.
Not horrible. It's not terrible on offense last year. And now I look at the roster on paper and I say, I think they're going to be better than 74.7 points per game. You got Naithan George, who can score a little. Like, he can average over, he's going to probably average over 10 points a game.
Yeah,
he just did it last year at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And he's also an elite passer.
Yeah.
So he's going to help players get into better positions than maybe last year, right? I think he is going to end up being what we were hoping that Jake Juan Carlos was going to be. Just to be blunt with all of you. You got JJ Starling, who I don't think will average around 17, 18 points a game like he did last year, but I don't think he'll necessarily have to.
Have to.
I think he'll have that slight I think he'll still be counted on as the team's leading scorer, but I don't think he'll have to be the only player on the offense that has to score.
Well, if he
So
averages a little bit less, but is more efficient and shoots
exactly, if
threes
he can be
better,
a little bit more efficient, we'll take that. And
Yeah.
and 15 points a game, fine. Donnie Freeman for a whole season, hopefully, right? Hopefully he's healthy for a whole year. And then I think Nate Kings is probably going to be a little bit more consistent than Chris Bell. So I look at those 4 players alone and I say, I think Syracuse is going to be better on offense. I think they're going to be able to score okay. They might have a top 5 scoring offense in the ACC. What do you think?
top 5. They what would that require them to average? Like upper 70s?
So last year, top 5 in the
Yeah,
ACC.
I don't know that.
You wanted to be 5th in the ACC.
Right.
That was Clemson, 76.1 points a game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if again, like you said, and it was well said, they averaged about 75. I definitely think they could average more this, into this coming season, and hopefully they give up less. So yeah, I think they could be. The keys are multiple, but I'd say one of the main ones for me is, yeah, obviously being more consistent from deep, but also like cutting down on turnovers. I mean, the turnovers, because, and I'm not saying, I'm like saying Captain Obvious here, but when they're turning the ball over, whether it's live ball and it leads to transition points for the other team, or it's just a turnover and whatever happens in the half court set, those are, it's empty possessions. So, if they can cut down on the turnovers, I think that's a huge thing as well. I definitely could see them averaging 76 to 70 or 80, maybe even low 80s.
I don't know if
maybe not low 80s. Maybe
they're
not
not going to average 80.
Yeah. What did Duke average this year? They averaged like in the low 80s, didn't they? Something like that.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah. You're right. Okay.
Duke averaged 83.2.
Yeah.
North Carolina was at 80.7. Third place was SMU at 79.9. I think a fair target for Syracuse is like 76 to 78 points a game.
That sounds about
where you're probably targeting, because that'll probably be good enough for top 5 in the ACC this upcoming season. And if you have a top 5 offense in the conference, hopefully, that'll make you a lot better than you were last year. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
right?
I mean, at this point, if we're it's really comes down to are they better on defense?
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of defense, before we get to defense, I do want to point out, just to back up what you were saying about turnovers, I have the stats pulled up right here. Syracuse basketball a year ago was dead last in turnover margin. They were a negative 2.7 turnovers a game.
Yeah, so that's that's a problem.
That is a major as far as how many they turned over per game, like just themselves coughing the ball up. They were second worst in the conference, over 12 and a half.
I was going to say, it was like hovering around 12-ish throughout. Yeah, you can't have that. You can't have that.
Nope. And Virginia Tech, for those that are curious, was the worst as far as turnovers.
I never would have guessed that.
They weren't a very good team. So maybe you could have guessed it.
Right.